auntie.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back. We are your aunties, and we are excited to be here tonight. We got a great one for you guys tonight. I'm telling you right now. My name is Paige Means Hopper. I am the author of Healing the Wounds of American Slavery and the founder of the movement of the same name. And I have two of my favorite aunties with me tonight. I'd like for them to go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Rosemary, Auntie Rosemary, and I am so happy that you guys are here. Get ready to buckle in and have a ride of your life. I'm excited.
Hi, Auntie Genoa here. I'm also a published author, an artist, and a songstress and a poet. And your own experience is not necessarily the best teacher, but someone else's is if you listen.
If you'll listen.
Welcome.
And we have a very, very special guest tonight. Her name is Shar Chatfield, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her and then let her tell you much more about herself. So she is a native of North Carolina, and she started doing genealogy and genetic genealogy research 12 years ago. And she's really smart. She learns quickly. So you can only imagine how much she picked up in 12 years. And she did this after participating in the 23andMe Roots to the Future campaign. And today, her passion is sharing her journey with us so that we can follow in her footsteps, understand our roots, right? So initially, she just wanted to know more about her family history, but as she got into her hobby, it got to be much more. And she quotes here, "To me, genealogy is more than discovering your origin. It's about making historical connections with the communities that I have familial ties to and linking them to American history." Is that right up our alley, ladies, or what?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Love that. So she's super enthusiastic about her family histories of two different states, that's North Carolina and Virginia. And she'll tell us more about that when we get into the show more. She has her BS in information systems. She is a pharmaceutical executive, and she has her MBA from North Carolina Central University. Woohoo!
HBCU.
Yes. And she continued her study of genealogy under experts such as C.C. Moore, who helps Henry Louis Gates Jr. do his Finding the Root shows. And also Maurice Gleason, Judy Russell, Shannon Christmas, T.L. Dixon, and Blaine Bettinger. In addition to genealogy research, now she says that genealogy is her hobby. I call her a master genealogist, and I'll tell you why in just a minute as we get into this thing. But she's an avid supporter of the March of Dimes, and she's also a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Inc. So she does have speaking engagements. She does one-on-one coaching in genealogy. She also helps families find each other. So at the end, we're going to give you her information so that you can touch base with her, because I know you're going to want to after you hear all of the exciting things that she was able to do for me and that she's done for her own research and for others. So welcome to the show, Shar Chatfield.
Hey, wonderful introduction. I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Yes. Is there anything more you want to tell us about yourself for now?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay, then let's just get into this. I'm so super excited. So the format goes that, we do our introductions, and then I read a little bit from my book. And then we connect the dots historically. I start with a little bit of historical content, and then we connect the dots to the current cultural context. And then we go into future possibilities for our generations as they discover new information, like the information you're going to deliver tonight about genealogy, right? So I'm going to start on page 31 of my book tonight. It's going to be a very interesting perspective, actually. And if you have your books, you can follow along. If you don't, you need to get one.
Right.
And Shar, I'm going to send you one, Shar.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
So this is from a chapter 2, and it's called We Were There. I am like most other Black Americans. We are descendants of our ancestors who were ripped from their homes, dragged onto a strange continent, and virtually destroyed. Those of us who are here now, survivors of the survivors back then, may feel a bit lost. I know I do.
Hmm.
I have long felt disconnected from my true heritage, my roots. I have longed to know the true humanity of Black Americans, including the truth of our dehumanization. Many of us, probably hundreds of thousands, may have attempted in earnest to trace our ancestry pre-slavery, pre-America, back to African soil. It would be an understatement to say that this is sometimes a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
On January 23rd, 1977, I received the most amazing gift. The stunning television drama series Roots began to air on television. Its massive inspiration incited in many Black Americans a strong desire to search for our genealogical roots. But at that time, there was almost nowhere to go, not even to begin. 40 years later, there are companies peddling DNA-based genealogy tests, proposing to exact the science of calculating precisely from whence our African ancestors originated. Many of these companies claim that DNA testing, this is in quotes, DNA testing has allowed more than 100,000 Americans to trace their genealogical ancestry back to Africa. End quote. High-profile celebrities have publicly taken this expedition via Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr., a regularly scheduled program presented by the Public Broadcasting System, that's PBS. Among these celebrities are filmmaker Spike Lee, who's one of my favorite auteurs,
Mm-hmm.
heartthrob actor Isaiah Washington, and comedic actor Chris Tucker. But when the ultra media mogul with the Midas touch, Oprah Winfrey, granted her stamp of approval on the project by appearing on the show to find her African ancestors, most Black folks became instant believers.
Yes, they did.
It is a statistical reality that Black Americans are the fastest growing population of consumers in this country. We will buy almost anything in order to feel more human in this confusing landscape of the free and the brave. Almost anything to prove our sense of self-worth in a country where the forefathers of its citizens pinned stolen descendants of Africa, each and every one of them, into the annals of American history as merely 3/5 of a person, after they had pinned them in cages. Could it be that peddling viable DNA tests adds more smoke and mirrors to our collectively cloudy belief system, offering more lies to lure us into the ultimate shell game, to shell out capital and waste our resources like a gambler who can't stop betting on a sure thing? The sad and terrible truth is that most of us will never know our family's heritages before or after slavery. Our public records, when they exist, are scant, bearing only first names, sometimes ages, and the bounties for our capture, hardly enough to account for our existence on Earth. Even the griots, the traditional keepers of our oral African history, have tried, but failed in the attempt to shore up our hopes of finding out and knowing who we are. This book is written to all of us, even myself, to help lead us toward our healing, but it also has special importance for our children, and their children, and all of our generations to come. Because most young Black Americans I talk with, if they're not in total denial of the truth and they're willing to talk, think their history begins on a Southern plantation.
Yep.
They don't know the real story of how and why, or how far back the story actually begins, and they shy away from conversations that threaten to take them there. I believe firmly that at least 20 million beautiful human souls were ripped from the shores of Africa, chained and transported not just to the New World, but into a new and devastating land of humiliation. The erasing of their cultures of origin, the rape, forced breeding, torture, and often death resulted ultimately in one of the most brutal realities: broken familial ties. Too many times I've sat in tortured silence while my white friends recount stories of how their ancestors invented this or discovered that, or preserved some integral part of their family's history for its progeny. I am there numbly envious, begrudging their palpable pride, covetous of an equally rich breadth of knowledge of those from which I come. Oh, how my white friends go on and on, recalling their great-great-grandfather so-and-so, leaving such and such records of his achievement for great-uncle so-and-so, that he might continue the tradition of this and that in the fields of science, health, medicine, politics, and other industries. The undeniable reality overwhelms me. The bones of my ancestors are tossed about in their watery graves beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Still, listening patiently to my white friends, I'm becoming angry, mostly at their lack of awareness, much less empathy and compassion, as each word happily dances from their memories across their tongues, flits into the air, and strikes me across my face, leaving a stinging pang of, so there.
Wow.
Yeah, girl, yeah. So, questions. We have questions. First of all, some of my questions have been dispelled by Shar. When I first started writing my book, I had a stark disbelief in the power of the DNA companies to establish any kind of a paternal, maternal bloodline search for me.
Yes.
But then I told y'all, I promised y'all coming on this show, I was going to share with you what happened with Shar. I called this girl a few months ago and I said, Shar, of some relative, Curtis Pierce, he left my dad these photos. And I don't know if y'all have boxes of like these kinds of photos that you don't know who the person is and what's going on. But I was fortunate enough that this relative wrote notes on the back of each one. And so I knew that this was my great grandfather.
Wow.
But, you know, it was still just kind of, okay, I'm not really sure. So I call up Shar or I text Shar or whatever I did. I contacted her and I said, okay, I got two things. I got a name and I've got a city. That's all I got. And I said, can you help me? And she's like, sure. I'm like, okay, how do you know? So, so I kid you not. Within 15 to 20 minutes, I had all of these documents. And I mean, these are no joke. I'm not going to show them up to the screen. It's no one's business. But I have a marriage certificate of my grandparents. I have a birth certificate of my father, my own father. I have records from where my grandparents and my cousins and all of them lived in that area. I have death certificates. I have a divorce petition, and I have a registration card, a military registration card for my grandfather, who I didn't even know was in the military.
Wow.
And the capper was this obituary, and the obituary was for my grandfather's wife, who I didn't even know this man was married. Now, let me tell you this. I knew zilch about my grandfather before I got this information, because my father never spoke about his father. Never. The only thing I ever heard my father say about his father is that he was a no good SOB. Take a sip on that. He was a no good SOB. So now I've got to look for the no good SOB. So what I discovered, Shar, is that my father was the big secret in his family.
Oh.
His father. Okay, so my grandfather, my grandmother, his parents, they were married. I didn't know that either, because I'd already told that he was a bastard child. They were married. I never knew that until you sent me this divorce decree.
Oh,
so, well, to get a divorce, you had to have been married.
Married, exactly.
And so what had happened was they had my father, and then my grandfather started another family. and
That's what they
left
do.
my grandmother and my father. And so then my father became the secret.
Mm.
We don't talk about it. So imagine the rejection and the abandonment and all of those things that passed down the generational bloodline to me and my brothers in our relationship with my father.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to go any further because our time is severely limited tonight. And I
Wow.
want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to go through and explain to us certain things.
Okay.
One big question that's on the table for tonight
Okay.
is I have total faith in what you do because of what I learned. And it just completed me
Mm.
in a major way. And I reached out to my cousins, right? And they were very surprised to know that I was alive because my father was supposed to be the big secret that didn't exist.
Right. So when we connected the dots,
Hi!
we connected the dots with the DNA matches and everything. You were like, "Hi."
Right. And here's what did it. I was back and forth with one cousin on Messenger, back and forth, back and forth. Well, do you know this? Do you know that? Do you know this? Do you know that? We were on there for a good 2 hours. And then at the end, I said, would you like to see the picture that I have? And he said, yes. And I showed him the picture of my great grandfather. This is my grandfather's father.
Wow.
What means.
Watch
And
me. Right.
then the correspondence just stopped because he was stunned. He said,
Wow.
that looks exactly like your grandfather. And it looks like your uncle. Uncle? You mean my father had a brother?
Wow.
And unfortunately, my father and his brother, my uncle that I didn't know about, who looks like Wash Means, died in the same year, 2018.
Oh,
So I didn't get
wow.
my uncle.
Wow.
I want to give a shout out to my cousins, Bishop Eric Tate Martin, who just got his doctorate, and Brother Shane Martin, because they have embraced me. They have answered every question I have. They've connected me with everybody I want to know about. And it's just been, I won't say it's a dream come true because who wants to, find out about their family in that way? And, after people have died and you can't really communicate with them. But I now know who I am on that side of the family. So, all right. Now let's open up this discussion to the big question.
Okay.
So that's within the United States, right? And again, I'm sold. I'm a firm believer that it can be done. But what about across the Atlantic? How are they getting DNA swabs and information from across the Atlantic to do these? Oh, we're going to take you back to your native African tribe. And the majority of people that I have spoken with that have done that kind of testing have come back as Nigerian, like almost predominantly like everyone's Nigerian. How's
yeah.
that possible?
Well, I mean, you have to think about where they stole us from. Primarily West Africa. So, and you have to think the Igbos and the Nigerians were the strong ones, right? So they
Right.
pick the choice, Negroes and things for the slave trade, which is why a lot of it. Because my top, I think I'm 45% Nigerian, or it's a high percentage.
Mhm.
So Nigerian, Benin, Togo, Senegal, Ghana. It just runs down the coast of West Africa. But then I also have like Mozambique, Madagascar, from my grandmother's mitochondrial DNA. So what they do, how they get the samples, is that they just go get reference samples from all over the world, and that's how
Reference
they.
samples.
Mhm.
So they just have people volunteer
Mhm.
to give samples. Okay, so why are the majority of us ending up Nigerian? Because you're saying that the most of the slaves or most of the enslaved ancestors came from that area.
Yeah.
Okay, but then what about Ghana? What about the Ivory Coast? What about?
Well, see, it's all of before they had like defined country, borders and everything.
Right.
They were all there together.
Mm.
So this is going back, thousands of years.
So then
So
how can
before
we
they
be
were.
more distinct about the particular areas that we come from then?
Well,
Is there a way or no? Or
yeah, because they actually go and get the reference samples from those countries, and you can like dial down to the like the area where the people came from, where they migrated from out of Africa. Because
okay,
we all came from there, even our Caucasian cousins.
Right.
Mitochondrial Eve.
Right.
And
Hello,
everybody,
come on now.
and
Let's talk
everybody
about it.
spread out and they went to different places. Now, it's kind of interesting because when I got my first DNA test with 23andMe, 23andMe, they will give you this thing called a haplogroup. And what a
Haplogroup.
haplogroup is, men carry from both their mothers and their fathers.
Mhm.
Women, we only carry from our mothers. So
Okay.
if you want to test your haplogroup for your father, you would have to get a sample from your brother, and he would actually cover both mother and father because he has both.
Got it.
So what that is that it goes unbroken from mother to daughter or father to son, going all the way back to wherever we came from originally.
Hmm.
So in my case, it's a little bit interesting because my haplogroup was European.
Mm.
Why? Because my great 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 grandmother was European, and that haplogroup goes unchanged from mother to daughter.
Okay, so it's the woman that carries the hapla or whatever that
Well,
is
the
for the
mitochondrial,
female.
the
The
mitochondrial
mitochondria
haplogroup
for the females.
for the females, right?
And then the men carry it for both the male and the
Both male,
female.
because you get the XY chromosome.
Oh, that
So,
makes sense.
yeah,
Okay,
so if you have a male, if you test a male, you get both samples.
got it. So
Mm.
you brought up something. Oh, I'm sorry, aunties. Did you have anything you wanted to add or anything you want to ask her while she's here? Because you know what, she's a national treasure as far as I'm concerned, and we have her here, so you might as well ask while she's here.
Well, you know what? There's one thing I want to know, because right in between where you was talking about, what if you don't have a brother?
You can if your father had a brother. So it's like it comes off the male line. So if you have a brother or a cousin of the male who came descended from the same like grandfather, if they
Okay.
had sons, their sons will all carry the same haplogroup.
So this is how we zero in on the specific region that we came from.
Mhm.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
Because go ahead. I'm sorry, Journal. Go ahead.
okay, this is my question. Okay, my father's still living. Okay. I do have a son
Okay.
and everything. So
Well,
if
your son will carry the haplogroup from his father. Your father will carry the haplogroup from his father.
that's related to me.
Right.
Coming down.
So your son carries his father's haplogroup. Your husband or your significant other, who his father is, he carries that haplogroup. Where your father carries the one from his father, and if you have a brother, he'll carry the same haplogroup from your father.
So explain what the haplogroup is.
The haplogroup is
break that down.
It's a code. Like mine is H1, and H1 when we migrated out of Africa, H1 ended up in England and like southern France and Spain, the Iberian Peninsula. So there's a book called The Seven Daughters of Eve that explains all of the haplogroups.
Okay, so you're saying that the haplogroup, each group is a code?
Yes.
Okay.
Each area is a code, so where they came from. So that's how they can narrow down. Like my father, he is RM269, which is England, Ireland.
Okay.
Because his progenitor, probably from slavery somewhere, was Caucasian.
Right. Let's talk about it. So actually, one of our viewers, Jacqueline Yvonne, hi. She came on and she wanted to know if I will definitely give you Char's information, because she was saying that she took 2 separate genealogy tests. I think one was from 23andMe and one was from Ancestry.com. Okay. And they were both, what did you say? Can you bring that comment back up again?
Yeah, let's say comment.
2 companies, but no actual history other than Nigerian ancestral origins. Got you.
Okay.
All right. Very good. I mean, we could go really, really deep because she can go that deep.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to keep it like in a layman's kind of format. So 7 Daughters, tell us the name of that book again. 7 Daughters
of Eve. Yeah, it explains the haplogroup codes for the women and where they came from. And it's a really interesting book because H1, I think it stands for Helena, and we were hunter-gatherers.
Wow.
During the prehistoric period, after we migrated out of Africa, going into the Europe after the Ice Age.
You said it stands for Helena?
Helena. Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is really interesting. Hello, Catherine Otten. How are you? We saw you pop up. Okay, now tell us about, you were saying earlier that you were part of the Daughters of the Revolution.
The Daughters of the American Revolution, yes.
Daughters of the American Revolution. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, because on my mother's side, as I mentioned earlier, my great great grandmother was white. She had a baby with a black man in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, in 1871.
Ooh,
Right,
Wow.
scandalous, right?
that was revolutionary.
That was very revolutionary. I'm like, sometimes I want a time machine because I want to go back and be like, what were you people doing? I'm like, how?
It was clear what they were
It was
doing.
clear. It was clear. It was real clear. Um, they ended up. I had
That's
to like
unusual.
basically, really. So I had to basically have all of my information. I had to prove my genealogy on paper from myself, my parents, my grandparents, great grandparents, all the way back to the Patriot and the Revolution. But if
Wow.
I tell you who my patriot is, you're gonna look at me like, what? So my
Who is it?
patriot is William Lindsay Durham.
Mm.
Does that name ring a bell?
It does, and I don't know why.
Well,
Yeah.
Durham, North Carolina.
Oh, Durham.
Same
Yeah.
family.
Wow.
The
And this
person
was your great 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 grandmother. Married this had a baby with a black man. Let's get clear. Had the
in
baby with a black
1871.
man. Now, how does William Lindsay Durham tie into that?
Well, her mother was her father was a Pendergrass or Pendergrass, like Teddy Pendergrass, but
I was
he's
going to say
probably a
related
distant
to
relation.
Teddy.
Distant relation. But her mother was a Durham.
Wow, her mother. That's wow. So, and then this is where you live now, right? In Durham, North Carolina.
I
or
was born in
Fayetteville?
Chapel Hill, and I used to live in Durham. So yeah, that's us.
Wow.
And so your family had been on that land.
My family's been in this area for like in North Carolina for 225 years. My hometown was founded in 1770.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
we like when I say ties to American history, we
Yes,
ties
ma'am.
to American history.
Yes, and you know what is really what I love about your being on, and it's just really striking a chord with me, is how versed you are at knowing. And this is the kind of conversation I talked about in my book that I would have with my white friends, and they would know, because even that oral history travels down. But because our records had been so obscure for so long, you do have to do a lot of digging. I mean, you've been at this for 12 years, your genealogy search and all
And
research and all
so,
of
you
that.
know, you can imagine when I got my, haplogroup, my 23andMe haplogroup, and it came back European, and I saw it on paper for the first time, and I'm like, oh my God, it's true. I always knew it was, because if you saw my mother and her sisters and my grandmother and Grandma Lou, who was the daughter of the white black woman and the black man, she looked white.
Wow.
So it wasn't a surprise, but
Mhm.
to see it on paper, it was like, well, you can't get any more,
And
clear
it's
than that.
And that's what really brings it to life, is like when I started getting all of these documents from you, it just shifted something in me. Like it made it real, because I'd heard bits and pieces of stories. And I think that's all most of us have, right, ladies?
Right.
Bits and pieces, and what auntie so-and-so was willing to share with you behind closed doors, and what uncle might have whispered to you at the family reunion, and just little bits and pieces. But when it all starts to come together, then that's what really makes a difference. And that's where I want to see the people that I know, and everyone who reads the book, and everyone in our village, really, that we are as versed and articulate about where we come from and who we belong to as are you.
I just sent my husband to get my genealogy folder so you
Yeah.
can see the stack of paperwork that I had to
It'll be like a
use.
big Flintstone book, huh?
It's gonna be a little book.
You know what I like about the whole thing is it's just not knowing where you're from. I mean, you incorporate.
Did y'all see how much paper this is?
Yes.
This is my paperwork that I used to prove my lineage to the Patriot. And then once I sent that in, they still had questions, and they rejected my first application.
Because you're brown, right?
Right. They were like, well, this is unusual, and that's unusual. And I had to literally just sit down and write a letter, because they were looking for like marriage licenses and things like that. And I said, well, you do know, because of Love v. Virginia, interracial marriage wasn't legal till 1965. There was a Supreme Court case. There weren't going to be any marriage records.
Yeah, and you know what else is interesting too that just came to mind is that we talked about the white slave masters raping the women, but the mistresses were also raping the men.
Yeah.
Now, see, in my case, my great great grandmother was born after enslavement, so she was born during Reconstruction.
Okay, yeah, that
So
was great, great, great. So it
great,
wouldn't have gone back as
so it's
far.
1871. So it was 5 years post
Yeah,
emancipation. But yeah, that happened. I
it
mean, it was
definitely happened, and then the little brown baby would come come out. But what was I going to say about that? Also, I just lost my whole train of thought. It'll come back. It'll
But
come back.
I don't know if you heard me but I was talking about how history is laid in that it's not just where you're from, it's everything of surrounding. So I was really surprised, pleasingly surprised when you said, "Oh, I have my family, my roots in Durham and that whole history." And I'm like, "Wow, I didn't even think about that." I just
yeah,
thought, I'm just here, I'm from this area, and that's it. But it's so much more. And then everything
it's
that
so
you had
much
to
more.
prove,
And they,
everything
I
you had
mean,
to
and
prove.
they don't tell us. We
Mm-mm.
if you're lucky to find a scrap of paper, here, there, and luckily, my great great grandmother listed her. I mean, I had to, fight for these people to accept this information. And I was like, they live next door to each other, and they were like, well, it's unusual. How do you know that Mary Pendergrass is yours? And I'm like, well, because my grandmother still lives on the same side of town. Our home property, the property that we still own to this day, is right across the woods from the, where the white woman is buried.
Wow.
I mean, literally
So it's
through the
almost
woods.
anything just to not be associated or related to Black people, essentially. Wow.
Wow.
Well,
But here we are.
I've seen little videos and stuff with the Daughters of the Revolution, and you can't get any whiter than the ladies I've seen representing. They have flags and they have all their little stuff they're doing, but I've never seen a brown person in their group.
Well, there are about 150 of us, and we're proud and we're strong. And I can actually have to next time you have me back, I'll bring a picture,
Please, would
and
love
I'll
to
show
see
you the
that.
picture of all of us together because we meet every year in DC at our Continental Congress, and we have lunch, and we take a picture with the President General to say, hey, yes, we're here.
I love
Mm,
that, and
that's
I would love to have that
Wow.
photo. You need to send that to me so I can put it on my aftermath of of the show.
Oh, if
Love
you go to www.daughterdialogues, I think it's .com,
it. Hmm.
my fellow daughter and colleague Risha Rainey, she actually did a oral history project with Dr. Henry Louis Gates,
Oh,
and she
nice.
recorded all of our oral histories. So we're on record a lot of the daughters for the Schlesinger Library at Harvard
Oh,
with our
Wow.
that's
stories are
amazing.
there, so
What's
you
the
can
age
see.
range of the Black daughters, the 150? What's the
We go from anywhere from 1920 to elderly, like 80s.
wow?
mm.
I love that. Oh, yeah. Have you thought? Are you doing a documentary?
Oh, I don't know. We have to ask Risha about that.
Please ask someone.
Yes,
We need to talk
definitely.
about it. We need to talk about that. Oh my God.
Can you get that website again?
www.daughterdialogues.com or .org.
.com or org.
Let
Okay.
me see. I don't.
Okay, we'll check out
Okay.
both and see where it
Yeah.
is. And
I'm actually jealous because when I was growing up, I know my father told me some things, and he told me we can't prove it, so don't be talking about it.
oh,
That right there. And then my uncle got his done, and it didn't match anything. And I was at the point where I just thought Black people just dropped out of the sky somewhere. I'm
oh
We
sorry.
my
did not.
gosh.
So we
Yeah.
have to help you, Auntie Jenna. Well, you know what? We're gonna help you, is we're gonna get you started because everybody has a past,
That's right.
and you know what? When I started my research and everything, I found so much, so much. I mean, I found that I'm descended from, of course, enslaved Africans, but I have free people of color. I
Mm,
have Native Americans, and I have Europeans.
mm.
It's all in there like Prego.
And we need to know every aspect
We
of
need
who
to know.
we are.
Mhm.
I mean, because imagine, I'm in a DNA group with some cousins of mine, and we all have like free people of color from Chatham, Orange, Alamance, in the area that we all grew up in. And I'm like, well, how am I related to all you guys? And you all have free people of color ancestors, and I haven't found mine yet.
Mm.
And what happened? A wonderful lady named Sue Ashby in my hometown. She basically took all the free people out of the 1850 census and 1860 census and put them on a website and put them in red. So all the people of color. So I'm reading through, and I'm like, I was like, I came across a record for William Smith, born in 1838, and I was like, I have a William Smith that was born in 1838. That was my William Smith. He was free as a child.
Wow.
I found his apprenticeship records, and I ended up I know where he and his wife first wife were buried, but he because back then free people could only marry other free people. So not only did I found him, I found 6 other families that I'm connected to.
Did he remain free? I'm curious.
He was born free and stayed free.
Okay, born free, stayed free. Okay, I didn't know if he had later on been captured or something.
No,
okay.
no.
It wasn't no 12 years a slave here, huh?
Nope.
So
You know what I like about this whole thing is I don't know if you remember the saying or hearing different sayings. I'm part Irish, I'm part German, I'm part Dutch or whatever, and then that feeling of
you can't participate in the conversation, or you don't think you can.
Right.
Because,
that was nothing.
Right.
I felt some kind of way about that.
Because you would. Because
articulate it though, because it was like, what?
Yeah, I read it better than the book.
Because you can't participate, and then you just like everybody else is doing their family trees, and we have like well, his grandma and my dad and all of these people, but we can't really get too much further than that.
Right. So this is awesome.
So for the sake of our audience and us as well, where would you recommend that a person start with this conversation about genealogy or with the process?
Well, you basically start with yourself. So you have yourself, you have your parents, you have your grandparents, you have great grandparents. If you have that information, you can at least get back to 1870.
Okay.
Which was the first census that listed formerly enslaved people by name on the census.
Okay. And then which one of the DNA companies do you think is the most accurate at this point?
They're all accurate. I mean, 23andMe, Ancestry, Family Tree DNA, it's going to tell the truth. So be prepared to find out things you knew, things you didn't know, and things you didn't want to know.
Right. Like my daddy was the secret.
Yeah, my mom, pa, and pa, people adopted. I mean, it's all gonna come out in the wash. I've tested, and my family's been great. I've tested my mother, my grandmother, and I at 23andMe. I've tested my mother, my auntie who just passed, rest her soul. She gave me a DNA sample. My father, I just got his ancestry kit. So I think I only had one chance to get my dad, so I tested him at Family Tree DNA because I wanted to get his Y DNA to at least try to find out where we came from, and his Y DNA ended up being matched to some guy from 1650 Massachusetts. So talking about colonial history.
Yeah,
we have.
Tell us what Y DNA is.
Well, Y DNA is the paternal haplogroup. So when I talked about the haplogroups and things, that's what the Y DNA. So you can it's basically is going to be tied to a surname and a code, and all the original surnames from the it'll tell you, are you a Smith or you're a Johnson, or do you not, who are you, and it'll tell you, and the more frequency the names that come up in the list, that's going to be who you are.
Got it. We have a viewer who's saying they feel lost. My mom's dad died when she was 16. Her mother died giving birth to her. I have no names beyond my mom. I don't have my grandparents' names. Any hope?
Ask her how old her mother is.
How old is your mother, viewer? And please tell us your name. It's okay. You could just give us your first name if you don't want to identify both of your names. But I remember what I was going to say when I lost track of my thought. I was having a conversation with someone who was saying, they didn't believe that I'm pure African. I don't have any, I know. I was trying not to do that. I kept a straight face because I'm the expert, and so I have to be professional. But they were telling me, oh, well, I'm pure. And you know what? Here's the thing. They knew they meant it. It wasn't a joke for them. It was real. And they were my color. So I was like, wait a minute. Now, if you're pure African, sweetie, then where do you think this color comes from?
Well, you really can't go on skin color because skin color.
You can't always go on color. That's
however, true. But the average African American is 25% European. Minimum.
Oh, wow.
That's the average. The only time you're going to see anything different is with people down on the Sea Islands, like with the Gullah, the Geechee, down in South Carolina, Georgia. Why? Mm-hmm. Because they were out there on the islands and they got left alone because the white folks didn't want malaria.
That was Jacqueline. She passed in 2016 at 82 years old, and she died. Her mother died in childbirth.
Tell her to reach out to me. We can
Okay, Jacqueline, we'll
start with
get you
give me.
Char's information.
We can start to try to find you, see what you have, because there's have to be, if she's 82, she should be in a census record somewhere. So first name, last name, where they were born, where they lived. There's got to be something somewhere.
I love that.
I'm not making any promises, but we're gonna try. Okay.
Right. That's it. That's the bottom line. It's really, it depends on the information that's out there.
Yeah.
Question.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. When you were looking for the Y haplo, why did you pick family trees? Are they the only ones that do that one?
Well, Family Tree has a database, and they pretty much specialize in Y haplogroup testing. And a lot of people have like surname projects and things. Like they go over to let's say Scotland or Ireland and go back to where these original people came from, and that's where that started. And you have and it mutates very slowly, and sometimes, so those mutations, the more matches you have in a certain range, the closer you are. So you're going to be like either 1 step or 0 steps away, but it's going to be stronger matches. So it definitely works. It works.
Now one more question, because my dad is still, like I said, my dad is still living.
If they're still living, get that sample while you can. Test them at everywhere. Let them spit in the tube. Send it to Ancestry. Send it to 23andMe, and then do a swab and do it at Family Tree DNA.
Really smart for you right now, Genoa. For
Yeah.
both your mom and your dad.
I mean, because I was fortunate to still have my grandmother, so I tested my grandmother everywhere. I'm like, here, lady, spit in the tube. Just
I got 5 tubes here. You got any spit?
no, really. She have her sample at 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, and Ancestry.
But both of my parents are
That
actually
is so
still living.
smart.
So my mother just turned 76.
Oh, and see, so what happens? DNA gets cut in half every generation. So the older you are, the closer you are to the original event.
That's right.
Wow. I better hurry up.
If you have both of them to test, please test them.
Wow.
I have another question here too,
Sure.
Shar. Okay. What is the relationship between our genealogy and the Mormons?
The Mormons, they just have as part of their religion, they do genealogy. So they have one of the best databases in the world. It's because they keep everybody's records. Everybody's.
Not just the Mormons, not just because I heard that they had African Americans, they have
everybody.
And where are these records kept?
Salt Lake City. But
Okay.
they have family history centers in a lot of different towns, and you can go in and get their microfilms, and a lot of the records are now digitized or online. On a website called FamilySearch.org is free.
And that's their records. FamilySearch.org.
Uh-huh.
And how long have they been keeping these records?
Probably since they started. I'm not really sure.
Since they started?
I mean, yeah, this part of their religion.
Oh, the start of their religion. Okay.
Is to do family history research and everything. So they take all the census records and church records and from all over the world.
I don't know when the Mormons started, though. Do you?
I don't know, but I have a cousin. It's kind of funny. I need to reach out to him. He's a master genealogist at Ancestry. And I'm related to him through that 1650 line that my dad's related to. He's part of that line, because when I did my dad's Y DNA, I expected one name and got another one.
So historical record keeping must be in your family DNA and your bloodline. Your cousin's a master genealogist. I say you're a master genealogist.
Yeah.
I'm a hobbyist, but I'm pretty good at what I do.
In my mind, you'll always be a master because I have all these papers. But I've always been curious about that and never really did the research on my own. I figured I could just ask Shar about the Mormons, because I had heard at one point, before technology was as widespread as it is now, that they were keeping records by hand, and they had their records kept in caves or something like that, or caverns, or
I don't know about all of that, but I can't really speak on that because I'm not sure. But I know they have they have a whole repository in Salt Lake City, and they have family history centers in different cities and things.
And FamilySearch.org is where we can find their stuff online. Okay.
You know what's so funny? I drive the Dial-A-Ride here, and there's a lady I took to a church, and that's what she was going there for. So there is a center, one of their centers here at a church.
Yep. That's normally where they are.
Mhm.
Wow.
Okay, so speaking of dollar ride, no, I just want to ask now, if you got to go through all of these entities to check your DNA, I mean, and then just like your background or your roots, I just noticed that one of the I think it was Jacqueline, and she went to 2 companies, and you got 2 different things. So, I mean, how expensive is it? How much is
It's an
it?
expensive hobby. So, thank you, Jermaine. 1820 New York Mormon Church started. But the tests, they have sales around different holidays and things like that. But the tests average like $99 a piece.
Okay.
Just for the basic. So I've spent hundreds of dollars texting out my family, just like buying kits up, and they go on sale like when they have Ancestry Day. They'll go on sale different times, so just be on the lookout.
Not bad.
At Prime Day, they go on sale too from Amazon.
Jermel, can you make notes of that, and then we can put that information up at the end, or we can put it in the village or on our Facebook page or something. That would be great.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a giveaway or something. Give away a kit to somebody or something like that.
That would be great.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That'd be great. So, there was a question that I had. It's escaping me now.
Oh, so you can come in at any time, Auntie Paige, but I just wanted to say, so I know you get so much information, like basic information. I'm a Nigerian background, history. And then if you want more information, then it's, maybe another $50, and then
so the only things, the 23andMe doesn't have subscriptions. Family Tree DNA doesn't have subscriptions, but if you get an ancestry test done and you want to know more and you want to see your matches and everything, you have to pay a subscription. And I just give every year for Christmas, I buy myself a gift membership.
Oh, okay.
When they go on sale.
Because this is fascinating.
It is. I found my question. I found it. Okay, so I wanted to know if any of you ladies have seen the film Descendants about the Clotilda.
The Clotilda.
The Clotilda. And Cudju was the name of the enslaved
Cudju Lewis.
Yeah, Cudju Lewis. Have you guys seen that?
Somebody found that slave ship that they broke up on the shore.
The last slave ship, and actually they burned it. They tried to burn it, and then it sunk, and then they couldn't find it, and it's been discovered.
Oh, they knew exactly where it was the whole time.
Oh, they knew. There were some people who knew where it was, but the descendants didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
They didn't know. And so the descendants were, well, you'll have to see it. I don't want to give away the whole film. I was just curious if you saw it and what you thought about that, Shar.
Well, that was great. I mean, because I was, when they did Questlove, the singer from the Roots.
Yes.
He's a descendant of the
producer.
Yeah, so that's why, because on the Finding Your Roots, that's how Dr. Henry Louis Gates told him he was a descendant of the Clotilda.
Oh, that's I was wondering why he was an executive producer, but he does a lot of historical pieces, whether he's related directly or not. Wow. Now that makes it even more exciting.
And Barracoon, the book by Zora Neale Hurston, she actually went down there and interviewed Cudju Lewis.
Yes.
In his own voice, and it's a really, really good book.
And she sings part of it, and she reads part of it, and it's fascinating. And thank you for reminding me to get it too. I need to get that. Did you get the book? So Barracuda.
Barracoon.
Barracoon, I'm sorry. Barracuda. I don't know what I was thinking. Barracoon is the book that Zora Neale Hurston did. She went down and interviewed Cudju Lewis, who was one of the enslaved Africans. He was an African who became enslaved because after the slave trade became such that they could no longer go and get slaves from Africa, they started breeding, right? They had been breeding the whole time. And then on a bet, a white man from, what's now called, what is it called? Africatown? Africatown.
Oh, yeah.
It's now called Africatown. He went and got a slave ship and went and got some more slaves, 100 more slaves, or 100 more Africans, and enslaved them and brought them back. And I won't tell where it was or any of that, because you'll be just fascinated by the information. But what I love the most about it was when the Smithsonian got involved, and you'll see what happened when the Smithsonian got involved, because at one point they were concerned that the city or the county where this ship was found was going to take over these descendants' rights and property, not property rights necessarily, but was going to take over their God-given right to tell their own narrative and tell their own story and possibly financially benefit from the finding of this ship. It is fascinating. So if you haven't seen it, it's on Hulu right now. I think it is where we saw it. Or was it on, no, it was on PBS. Michael, where was it?
What's it called?
He's gone to sleep. It's called
Descendants.
Descendants. It might be on
Hulu.
Hulu. I think it's on Hulu or Netflix, one of those.
Yeah, one of those.
But it is well worth the watch. Trust me, it really, really is.
Might have been Netflix. I don't know. It's Hulu or Netflix, one of the
Netflix or Hulu, one of those. If you just Google it, it'll tell you where to find it. And it's called Descendants. And it is very, very fascinating. And it looks like we're getting down to the wire here. And so, well, he wasn't asleep. He brought me the information. It's on Hulu.
Okay.
Great. So we definitely have to do a part 2, Paige.
We have to do a part 2. And really what I want to get into even more is bringing on like some more participants and some more questions about specifics about families and all of that kind of thing, so that we can really start to get down to the bottom of, our roots and how to find them, and just to really open up our imaginations and spark our imaginations and reignite our hope to find our families. And one of the things that was so important about this show for me, and it continues to be important, is that, one of the ugly features, right, of the institution of American slavery was the dissension and the disintegration of families, the breaking up of families.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have lost hope that they will ever find their people. And that was one of the first things that we did when we came out of enslavement, our ancestors did. They tried to find each other, because family is so important. It's totally and completely part of the African construct. It's community and unity and love, of our families. And so I hope that this has sparked a new awareness and a new hope for people to go digging around for your. I mean, I plan to do much, much more. It's not so much on my father's side, because I think I found everything I could possibly find, except, I could go back further if I could, have to have the time for that. But my mother's side now, there's a whole lot more information there. And I think it'll be more gratifying, right? When you're able to find the bits, the pieces, and the hardcore information of who your family is. And I can see just my creativity, my artsy side, where that comes from. I get it now. I didn't even know, for example, I was talking to my cousin. Oh, we need to get her DNA. But I was talking to the firstborn cousin in my family under my grandparents, the firstborn cousin. And I had no idea how much information this woman has just stored. I mean, the names, the dates, the places, what happened. And I just sat there for 3 hours one day and just typed with her on the phone. Just took everything. And it's, disconnected and disjointed, but I'll put it back together. I'm a writer. I'm an author.
But there's always elements of truth there, and you can always find it.
All kinds of elements. And a lot of it was ringing true for me, because remember, again, I said about the bits and pieces, the tidbit you get from an aunt over here, and a little bit you get from grandmother while you're cooking the cake and the kids. Like, it started to come clear for me. And one of the things I discovered is that my mother was a dancer.
Wow.
I didn't know my mother was a dancer. I'm a dancer. And my mother never shared that with me. I don't know why. We shared everything else, but she never shared that with me. So it's just like, really, you start to understand more about who you are. Were your people educators? Were they chefs? Were they architects? Were they adventurers? Were they scientists? Where do you get that we have our gifts, our own individual, our several gifts and talents, right? But then there's also just certain things that come through the family bloodline that everybody does well.
And you'll see that.
Right? Historians in your family, right? And educators and artists. And yeah, it's just really fascinating. And I hope that you all got so much out of this tonight. We're so excited that you joined us, and we really want you to come back next time. What we're going to do in March, though, ladies, it's going to be an all man's march. We're going to bring all men on the show for March. And then I would love to bring you back in April, Shar. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely.
Okay? Because I want to make April about families. And one of the things want to discuss, because it just seems to be such a hot button topic right now, is how to raise children who turn out to be respectful citizens, productive and respectful citizens in this cultural construct, where there's just so much going on, so much information, so much misinformation, so many lies, and homogenization of individualization. Like, nobody wants to be an individual anymore. Let's just all do it alike. Let's do all the music alike. Let's dress alike. Let's do our makeup alike. Everything is being done alike. So I want to bring that back. So anyone have any last words? I honestly believe we should give.
You know what? I know we don't have that much time, but I'm so excited when you come back, because I wanted to know the fight that you had to endure, what you had to go to just to prove, you know, your history, your legacy, and what that entailed, and you know, I can't wait.
It was a long letter that I had to write, and to be like, look, and just basically spell out everything. It's like, because I had to know documents and everything. It was all there. I just had to explain it, and they were like, oh, okay. You know,
how did it make you feel, sis?
I mean, I was irritated because I knew I was right, but I was, you know, once it was like they signed off on it, that's it, because they have the genealogist there. Nobody can take that away from me. It's in the record books now for posterity.
That was a hard fight. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. And you give us hope. Yeah. You really do. You're so welcome. Yeah. And Jacqueline saying thank you to you too, Shar.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
We have to find her people, because you know I can't imagine what that would be like, not knowing and not having many pieces. But there's got to be something somewhere.
Yeah. And my father's wife, she was adopted. She knew nothing. She still knows nothing. She doesn't know who her mother was. She doesn't know the hospital where she was born. She doesn't know the city where she was born. She doesn't know her father's name. She knows nothing. Therefore, my little sister, her daughter, knows, I mean, she knows her mom. She knows dad to the extent that she can. But remember, again, my father, no good as will be, he wasn't telling us about her grandfather. So
I guess start with DNA. I mean, start with DNA, and because if you guys also need to watch the Finding Your Roots from this week with Angela Davis and Jay Johnson.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, Angela Davis has an interesting background. I don't want to spill it, but she was like, yeah, she was shook. I'll just put it like that.
She was shook. So, Shar, any last words for our audience?
No, I just thanks for having me. I really, this is my, one of a passion of mine. I'm glad I was able to share, part of my journey with you, and I'll be back. We'll do this, and we'll make it a thing, because part of healing the wounds of American slavery is putting those ties back together.
That's right.
Finding, someone who may have gotten sold down the river, in Louisiana, while your people are back in Mississippi. It happened.
That's right. That's right. And we feel empty. We feel that hole. We feel it. So it would be good to satisfy those things. And aunties, we got about a minute.
I'm just literally floored. Looking, I had already looked before, trying to get information. I'm looking forward to looking with new eyes.
Yes, I'm excited for you.
It's so I'm excited about it, because it's so broad, and yet it's like we're gonna finally get some information. We're gonna get not closure, but we're gonna get some information that's much needed to just to be identified, and just to be a part of the history. I'm really excited. This is
find our little puzzle piece in this American quilt. This American.
Yes.
And the thing is, we're the thread.
We're the baby. It's a great place to close. We are so the thread. Oh, I love that. In this tapestry we call America. And on that note, we want to thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed having you here. We enjoyed having you, Shar. Thank you so much for coming. We're so excited you're going to come back. And everybody come back again next week on Monday at 7:00 p.m. PST. In the meantime, know that we are your favorite aunties. You could tell us anything, but there's a way to say everything. Good night.
Good night.
Hey, auntie.